Hey, Young and the Restless fans. We have got your spoilers for the week of June 1st through the 5th, and this week is absolutely delivering on every front. We have got Victor Newman standing tall and declaring victory in the corporate war that has been consuming him, and honestly, did anyone really think it was going to end any other way? This is Victor Newman we are talking about. And then on top of that, Matt Clark's fragmented memories are starting to crack through and rush back to the surface. And the big question hanging over everything is, what does that actually mean for everyone around him once those memories are fully back? Because the man those memories belong to is not someone anyone wants walking around Genoa City with his full faculties restored. It's Belinda from Soap Dirt, and we are getting into all of it for the week of June 1st through the 5th. But before we dive in, please hit subscribe if you are not already following us, because you absolutely do not want to miss a single episode. Alright, let's go. Monday, June 1st, Season 53, Episode 163, kicking off the week on Monday, June 1st, Season 53, Episode 163, and we have got Sally and Billy in a genuinely sweet moment talking through their wedding plans and their honeymoon plans, and there is a real warmth to where these two are right now. They are in a good place, they have a baby coming, they are planning a future together, and for once things feel relatively stable on the Sally front, which, if you have been watching this show for any length of time, you know is not something that lasts long. So enjoy it while it is here. Then Jack Abbott walks in, and the energy shifts in the best possible way, because Jack is genuinely happy for them. He congratulates Sally on the baby and the wedding, and he tells her he is so happy that she is going to officially be an Abbott. And that is a big statement coming from Jack, because the Abbott name means everything to him, and welcoming someone into it wholeheartedly is not something he does lightly. He is also hoping they have a baby girl, which is adorable, and then Billy asks Jack to be his best man. And Jack says yes, and he is happy to do it. These two brothers have had such a complicated road, and moments like this one matter. But the conversation takes a heavier turn when they get into Diane being allegedly missing. Billy feels genuinely conflicted about being so happy when his brother's heart is clearly hurting, and Jack opens up about the situation. He tells Billy about Diane stepping back from Kyle because of him, and then he gets into the Patty angle, that Patty might actually be behind Diane going MIA. Now Billy has information here. He admits that Patty told him point-blank that having Diane out of the way would help her pursue Jack. And Jack's response to that is immediate. "Why didn't you tell me this?" And Billy explains that he did tell Diane what Patty said, but Diane just brushed it off as more of Patty's erratic nonsense. Which, honestly, is understandable, but also in hindsight is terrifying. Jack also reveals that he has already hired a private investigator to try and track Diane down. So, he is not sitting around waiting for answers. He is going after them, which is completely Jack. Then we shift over to Sally meeting up with Audra, and Sally is low-key spiraling because Jack said something to her about how everything in her life is perfect right now, and instead of just receiving that as a compliment, Sally is now sitting in a state of anticipatory dread waiting for the other shoe to drop. Which is such a Sally thing to do, right? She has been through so much that when things actually go well, she does not know how to trust it. Audra, being the incredible friend she is, pushes back on that. She tells Sally she deserves every good thing that is coming to her, and that she has built her life around people who will actually show up for her. And Sally agrees. Choosing Billy and choosing Audra was smart. Those were good choices. And then the two of them fall into talking about wedding gowns, because of course they do, and it is exactly the kind of moment these two needed. Audra also makes sure to tell Sally that Billy better understand just how incredibly lucky he is to have her, which, yes, exactly, Audra. Now we pivot to Nick coming back from his visit with Matt, and Nick is walking in with a complicated mix of emotions because he went over there ready for something, and what he found was not it. He tells Sharon that Matt wants revenge, that the desire for it is there somewhere underneath the surface, but right now in this moment, he cannot act on it because what Nick actually saw was a scared, confused man who does not remember anything. And Sharon is genuinely shocked by this, because the Matt Clark they have always known has been so definitively, so completely evil that the idea of him being anything else does not compute. Noah shows up and they all sit with this together, and Nick is convinced the amnesia is real. But Noah is already thinking ahead. His position is that they should find a way to trigger Matt's memories to come back, so that when he is fully himself again, they can punish him properly. And so Noah brings everyone to his new Genoa City club, which is an identical replica of the Shadow Room from LA, and the detail and intention behind that is genuinely impressive and also incredibly unsettling. Nick and Noah are operating on the understanding that once Matt's memories return, he is going to be dangerous. That is not a question, that is a certainty in their minds. Sharon is not so sure about that framing. Meanwhile, Matt is alone in the gym, lying there, crying, just existing in this state of not knowing who he is or what he has done. And Roger Howarth is so good in these scenes. He brings this raw vulnerability to Matt right now that makes it almost impossible not to feel something for him, even knowing what he is capable of. He starts punching the heavy bag, working himself up, and then Nick shows up and tells him they are leaving. He tells Matt he is safe for now, and that they are taking him somewhere on a field trip to try and jog his memory. Sienna is completely unsettled when she sees the Shadow Room and how identical it is to the one in LA. Noah promises her that this place is going to hold only good memories for them going forward, but he is also honest that the whole point of bringing Matt here is to trigger something. Sienna is not convinced that getting Matt's memories back is actually going to end well for anyone. Noah's counter is that they have to do it so that there can be accountability. Sharon joins them, and then Nick walks in with Matt, who does not fully recognize where he is at first. And then Sienna tells him directly, this is just like the club in LA where he ran his fentanyl operation. And you can see Matt react to that, not with recognition exactly, but with discomfort and resistance. Then he starts moving through the space, and Nick asks him if anything is coming back. And it is. Matt starts getting flashes, Nick punching him in the bar, a confrontation where he is asking Noah why he would sleep with his wife when they were supposed to be friends. And then the memory that hits hardest, Victor Newman telling him he would be better off dead. Matt absorbs all of this with his back turned so nobody can see what is moving across his face while he processes it. That moment is chilling. Roger Howarth is doing extraordinary work, and this storyline is going to get very dark very quickly. Then we are over at the Newman side of things where Victoria, Nikki, and Victor are having a conversation about making sure Nick gets into recovery. Nikki thanks Victor for keeping her in the loop about Nick being in the hospital. Victoria is trying to get her parents to actually communicate with each other and stop letting their rift swallow the family whole, but they are not ready to hear it. Victoria tells them flat out that they are tearing the family apart and storms out. Nikki is left there quietly agreeing with Victoria, worried that the tension between her and Victor may have actually played a role in triggering Nick's relapse. Victor is not having it. He says the only person responsible for any of this is Matt Clark, full stop. But then Nikki tries to move them forward. She tells Victor she wants to find a way past all of this. And Victor's response is pure Victor. He says, sure, no problem, just cut Jack out of your life entirely. He tells her point blank, it is Jack or it is me. And then he walks out. And Nikki is left standing there, and then she gets hit with one of those crippling headaches and nearly falls over. And that headache is not nothing, as we're going to find out. Tuesday, June 2nd, Season 53, Episode 164. Tuesday, June 2nd, Season 53, Episode 164. And Sally is sitting down with Adam, and I think we all know exactly where this conversation is going. Adam is going to say his piece about Billy as a husband and as a co-parent, and none of it is going to be complimentary because Adam cannot help himself when it comes to Sally. He is going to have opinions, and he is going to share every single one of them whether she asks for them or not. I also expect them to talk about little Ava, the baby they lost, because that grief sits underneath every conversation Adam has about Sally's pregnancy. It is always going to be there. What is interesting is that apparently Adam has gone into this hyper-protective mode over Sally, and according to an interview, it is not about trying to get back together with her. He genuinely is not in that space right now. It is more that he feels this fierce need to protect her and the baby, which is either deeply touching or deeply concerning depending on how it plays out. Probably a little of both, knowing Adam. Also this week, Adam goes to Chelsea and asks her something completely unexpected. He asks if she has ever thought about having another baby, given that the two of them did such a good job with Connor. And I think we need to call that what it is, which is a knee-jerk emotional reaction to Sally's pregnancy news hitting Adam harder than he expected. Chelsea is not going to know what to do with that question. She loves Connor. She values what she and Adam built as parents, But that question coming out of nowhere after Sally's announcement is loaded in about 12 different directions, and Chelsea is smart enough to know it. Sharon is still not fully settled about Matt's supposed change of heart. She can see the memories coming back in him, and she is watching closely to see how his behavior shifts as more of who he was before starts to return. Victor, meanwhile, gives Nick no room to maneuver. He made Nick promise he would go to rehab after seeing Matt, and now Nick has to follow through on that promise. The problem is that Nick is not going willingly. He is going under duress, under pressure, because there's still no resolution on the Matt situation, and walking away to go sit in a facility while that is all unresolved is going to feel completely impossible for Nick. But Victor is not accepting any more delays. Wednesday, June 3rd, Season 53, Episode 165. Wednesday, June 3rd, Season 53, Episode 165, brings some genuinely interesting professional news for Stephanie. She tells Nate that she got a call from the board of directors at Genoa City Memorial Hospital. They're searching for a new chief of staff, and her name has been put into consideration. And Nate reveals that he was the one who put her name forward. Now that is significant. Nate going to bat for Stephanie in a professional context says a lot about how he sees her abilities and her leadership potential, and it also puts Stephanie in the position of having to make a genuinely difficult decision about whether this is what she wants right now. Nate helps her work through it, which is a nice dynamic, him being supportive in this very practical, grounded way rather than just hyping her up without substance. Sienna is still expressing her concerns about Noah's new business venture, and I think the Shadow Room is really getting under her skin in a way that goes beyond just the practical worries. It is the fact that Noah built an exact replica of a place tied to so much darkness and violence, and told her it was going to be something new and good. That tension between what the place represents and what Noah wants it to become is not going to resolve itself overnight. Devin gets some tough love from Lily this week, and I suspect it is about his anger issues, which have been simmering for a while now. Devin running hot is not a new thing, but when it starts affecting the people around him and the business relationships he needs to maintain, Lily is going to say something, because that is who Lily is. She loves him, but she is not going to watch him self-destruct without saying something. And then we have Nick and Victor in complete disagreement about what to do with Matt. Victor apparently wants to hand Matt over to the police, which is the law and order approach, while Nick's position is considerably more direct and considerably more final. Nick wants Matt dead. He wants it personally, and he wants it to be over. That disagreement between them is going to create friction, because Victor has his reasons for wanting things done through official channels right now, and Nick is operating purely on rage and grief, and a need for something that feels like justice. Thursday, June 4th, Season 53, Episode 166. Thursday, June 4th, Season 53, Episode 166, and the headline moment of the week arrives because Victor Newman declares that he won. Let that sink in for a moment. It sounds like Phyllis has handed Newman Enterprises back to Victor at this point, which means the corporate war is effectively over and Victor is standing on the other side of it victorious. Which, again, did anyone actually think it was going to end any other way? This is the man who has reclaimed his empire from the ashes more times than anyone can count. The idea of Phyllis Summers permanently holding Newman over him was always going to have a limited shelf life. But Phyllis has conditions of her own. She wants Michael to clear her name. She wants the legal situation around her resolved, and I think she sees helping Victor reclaim Newman as leverage for that. Now, whether Victor actually has the pull to make that happen is one question. The bigger obstacle might be Christine, who despises Phyllis on a level that is almost impressively personal, and I think Christine is going to refuse to drop those charges regardless of what Victor says to her. Christine's hatred of Phyllis transcends business logic and professional courtesy. It is just a thing that exists, and it has existed for a very long time. Then we get a really emotional scene with Nikki and Victoria. Nikki tries to explain away the headaches, telling Victoria that she has had migraines before, and her doctor is probably going to say it is just an MS symptom and she is already on medication for it. She is trying to reassure her daughter. But Victoria asks the question that needed to be asked. What if it is something more serious than that? And she is right to be worried. Because based on what is coming, it absolutely is something more serious than that, and this storyline is going to be very difficult for the Newman family to navigate. Friday, June 5th, Season 53, Episode 167, closing out the week on Friday, June 5th, Season 53, Episode 167, and Victor finally follows through on his promise to Lily. It looks like he is actually going to hand Chancellor back over, presumably now that he has Newman secured from Phyllis. And the interesting thing here is that Kane had previously told Lily he believed Victor would ultimately keep his word on this, even though basically nobody else did. Victor's word means different things in different contexts, and a lot of people spent a lot of time assuming he was going to find a legal or strategic way out of the Chancellor commitment. But it looks like he is going through with it. And Lily, of course, has always planned to hand Chancellor to Devon. So that sets up a significant moment for the two of them and for Chancellor as a whole. Then Audra and Holden have to face their past together. It looks like Claire demanded the secret that Holden had promised her, and he actually handed it over, and that is going to land like a grenade for Audra. Whatever that secret contains about her past with Holden, it is not something she wanted out there, and now it is. That confrontation is going to be intense because Audra does not like being caught off guard, and she especially does not like people from her past having information that can be weaponized against her. Holden giving that to Claire, whoever Claire is to him, is a betrayal Audra is not going to take lying down. And finally, Phyllis gets the benefit of the doubt from Sharon, which is a surprising development given their history. Now, whether this is Sharon extending some grace around the Matt situation, maybe believing that Phyllis is not entirely wrong about Matt not being dangerous right now, or whether it is more connected to the corporate give back and the Newman situation,